Well, good morning, folks. I want to talk about DHR and their services. The Department of Human Services is supposed to be assisting families with housing, with whatever services. My encounter with DHR is that they picked up my son based on allegations that I was potentially suicidal. When we went to court the first time in front of a referee, that was not brought up. The fact that I was potentially suicidal. That was just an excuse to pick up my son without a court order. In my opinion, the children are being used as collateral. I had a neighbor who was trying to get custody of a fourth grandbaby. I had seen children that were not her immediate family in her home staying with her temporarily. I did not know my neighbor very well other than our children played together, her grandbaby and my child. And I asked her why she had custody of her grandchildren, and she said that because the mothers were not stable. So every child that she takes care of, foster kid, is extra money, extra income. And she was trying to get a fourth grandbaby. Our children, my son and her grandchild, went to school together. So he was a foster kid living with grandma. Or maybe after foster period. I don't know how that works exactly. If once the grandparent has custody, full custody, I don't know. I was living in a good neighborhood. I was in moving transition. I was not involved in drugs or alcohol. I did ask the church, my local church where my son was doing sports year-round, for help with counseling for alcoholism for the owner of the house. To me, they've taken something and made it backward. So the person who needed the services, which was for drinking, didn't get the services. My son and I were separated based on allegations that I was potentially suicidal. That was not even brought up in court as an issue. Instead, they wanted to dig dirt on unrelated past. They wanted to know about my son, Jacob, who at the time was attending college. They wanted to know about his father and why. Unrelated. My children are 11 years apart. So to me, this was retaliation and it was backward. So the person who was supposed to be receiving the services for substance abuse, because I was not ready financially to move out. So I reached out to an organization that helps veterans, supposedly. And I reached out and asked if they could help me with housing. And that process took a long time. It took a lot longer than it should have. And toward the end of the wrapping up the paperwork, I was asked to sign a document which the way it was worded, it was like, if you don't sign this, it's going to take longer to help you, which it already had taken long with this organization, Housing First. It's called Veterans Homelessness Prevention Program, because I didn't know where else to go at the time. And because it was taking so long, I even considered moving out of state. And this is when Alexander was picked up after my housing had already been approved for an apartment. So the housing was already approved, but I didn't get the apartment. And this is not through DHS or DHR. This is through the Homelessness Prevention Program. So what happens during these things, the more you ask for help, the deeper you go, the deeper you're in. So the best thing to do is just not ask for help. So finally, I was able to find employment, full-time employment. And I was in situations where I was fully employed and was living in a household that was a good household, yet my son was not returned to me. When I lived with Mr. and Mrs. Miller, this couple had been involved in this industry, foster care, adoption industry. They even told me they knew the judge. So when I lived with them, saving money to get my own apartment, I was told that it's just best to save the money to move into my apartment. So I did. I was supposed to be getting Alexander back when they switched my caseworker. And all of this training that they do is just to use people instead of service people. And it's a demoralization. It is a demoralization. I came here to the South with good intentions. When I joined the military, I was stationed in the South, and I never left. I was a vegetarian, and I couldn't find vegetarian anything, so it was hard for me to maintain my diet. I was eating too much dairy, too much fat, and just the wrong foods. I gained weight. I was unhealthy in the military. So I was put on the weight management program. When I got out of the military, I wanted to pursue my culinary nutrition degree with my GI Bill that I paid into. But my ex-husband apparently didn't want to leave the South. He had something here that was holding him back. I know he didn't want to leave, because I even asked him if he would consider moving overseas He had lived in Europe during his time in the service and had lived overseas for 8 years or something like that. And I asked him if he would consider moving overseas because I always wanted to travel. And even before we got married, I had wanted to travel overseas. And he said to me that he didn't want to move overseas because things were so much more convenient in America. So we bought a house, but things were not going well. There was a lot going on with everything in the world. 911, even in my own neighborhood. We had bought property that was supposed to be wetlands, and they started expanding, cutting down all the trees and all that. The backyard that was supposed to be our back view was gone, and houses were being built, and a lot of construction through our property, and it just a lot of stuff going on simultaneously, and that's the way it is. I'm not gonna say that I'm without sin. I'm not. But how do you handle, what's the right way to handle something like that? So when Alexander was picked up, my children are 11 years apart, meaning that when I birthed Alexander, Jacob was 11 years old. Now, Jacob was 18 years old when they picked up Alexander, and they picked up Alexander based on allegations that I was potentially suicidal. They didn't tell me who did it or exactly when, and if they weren't able to prove that if it even happened. So when we went to court to see the referee for the first time, none of this was brought up that I was potentially suicidal. They asked me 5 questions. How many children do you have? How old are they? Where's your oldest son? Who got custody of him and why? When I try to get a divorce, like this is like right around the time of 911, it took 5 years in Mississippi. 5 years, and I couldn't leave. So my plans to study culinary nutrition out of state, my plans on selling the house and moving out of state, I couldn't, because I was told that if I sold the house, I couldn't sell the house because the divorce took 5 years, that if I left my house on Dove Lane, it would be considered abandonment of the home. If I left my son Jacob, it would be abandonment of your child. If I left with my son, it would have been kidnapping of your own son. So they're telling me, you cannot leave, and if you leave, you're going to lose everything. And I was being denied a job. So I had to get little jobs. But everywhere I turned, it seemed somebody wanted to take advantage of me. As if I were some kind of a gain or a game. I felt prostituted and exploited everywhere. I reached out to the White House. I have the letters, the emails to prove it. I reached out. I was my own advocate because I felt like even my parents were not advocating for me. My own stepfather and my mom, they were separated, but they still had their marriage. My mother has advocated for me once that I know of when I was a child in a hospital with a leg injury. It was really bad. And I heard her, even medicated. I was 10 years old. And I remember hearing her, even though I was groggy and medicated, in the emergency room. She wanted a second opinion from another doctor. So they called the doctor on call before they, by the grace of God. And for this, I'm thankful for my mom. I'm very grateful because she insisted. And so this doctor from China showed up. He was Panamanian, but he was Chinese Panamanian. And this is why I like Chinese people. I like Chinese people, and I like Chinese medicine. You know, China is not our enemy. And the reason why I'm saying all of this going back is because DHR dug up. They said to the referee Gant, we're going to ask her some questions. They didn't say 5, but that's the number of questions they asked. And I want you to know that I am not a deceitful, lying thief. I've not come here to just sit back and collect unemployment. I came here to give. And so somehow along the line, it was like swapped. Like, no, she's not here to give. I know I have to make a living. This is why I wanted to study culinary nutrition and come back to the Gulf Coast and open up my own restaurant. Because I learned that there was a need. So, when I was a child, I had this injury, and my mom did advocate for me. And I remember hearing her. And when I saw the doctor, the Chinese doctor, he was very soft-spoken, very quick, but very healing, because he took something that was very risky and challenging, and in a split second, he was able to fix me. And this made a world of difference. When God gives you a gift, and this gift is not utilized and is misutilized or hidden, then you cannot help humanity. Remember that what we do today affects humanity 1,000 years from now. So, this man took my leg, my foot, and saved my foot, and saved me. So my mom did advocate for me, and for this I'm grateful. My stepfather is not a bad person. But when somebody, it could be my stepfather, my mother, threatens my relationship with my children, jeopardizes it, I will speak up and I will point out their flaws as well. Because I never called DHR on my parents. And there was all kinds of drama. And I forgave and forgave. But somehow people always remind you, oh, remember this and remember that and remember this and remember that. And among them, my mom's not talking to my stepfather, so she'll talk to me. My stepfather's not happy with my mom, so he'll talk to me. My sister Michelle is not happy with my mom, so she'll talk to me. My sister Jennifer's not happy with my mom, so she'll talk to me. My sister's not happy with something my stepfather did or not did, she'll talk to me. My brother doesn't instigate. That's the difference. My brother has been very long-suffering and quiet. Long-suffering and quiet. And he has a heart of gold. I am not saying I don't love my family. I love my mom. I forgave her for whatever. And she birthed me. She saved me from, she gave me my future. And I considered at one point letting Alexander stay with my mom. Temporarily. But my mom became attached and began to talk to me. And there's so much going on. There's so many different angles. It's like a diamond, and you see how the different colors within the diamond. That's the way life is for all of us. And some families have more drama than others. But all families have pain and suffering and drama and secrets. So, because I had my leg, because of the Chinese doctor, because of my mom, because of the grace of God, I was able to join the military. When I was in high school, I had been an ESL student. And because I had been an ESL student, I had to read things 3 times before I could comprehend it fully. And it helped to highlight and look up things in the dictionary. I continued this pattern up until my early adulthood. When I joined the military, before I joined the military, my stepfather wanted me to consider going into nursing, to be a nurse. And I told him that if I was going to join the military, I wanted to do what he was doing, which was military intelligence in the Army, because of the use of languages. And I thought I could be a translator. And he said, no, I don't think you're going to like that lifestyle. It's not family friendly. They will cut your hair short in a bob, and I don't think you're going to like the lifestyle. You should join the Air Force instead and go into nursing. And I didn't grow up saying I wanted to be a nurse, ever. I know that I have a nurturing personality, but I never said I want to be a nurse. In fact, when I was in high school, I took the higher levels of art, and my art teacher pointed me out in the classroom and said, I want you to hold your paper up, what you're drawing. And he said, this is what I'm expecting out of this level class, something like this. And whether he did that to motivate me or to elevate my self-esteem, probably, but he was very sweet, very, very sweet to me. And he said to me, Susan, you have what it takes to get a scholarship in art, an art school scholarship. And I came home so excited that somebody had said, you excel at something, because I was I had been an ESL student, so I was not the best student. But I excelled in Spanish. I took AP Spanish, and I excelled in art. Nothing else. Not math. I liked science, but I didn't excel in the other classes as much as I did art and Spanish. And I know some of you may say, well, Spanish is your language, so that's why it was easy. But I was taking AP Spanish, like literature and grammar, just like a regular English class. So my stepfather said to me, you are fiddle farting around. You would be fiddle farting around if you do that. Don't fiddle fart your life away. So you see, when parents want to, my mom didn't say anything. I went to my stepfather because I was very excited. And I wanted somebody to be happy for me and proud. And he said that I would be fiddle farting my life if I chose art. So he recommended the military, and he recommended nursing. I had never said to him, I want to be a nurse when I grow up. Never. So, when I joined the military, because he encouraged me to go in the Air Force, although I considered the Marine Corps to be with my boyfriend at one point, so we could be stationed together. When I joined the Air Force, I chose the medical field because I didn't want to kill anyone. I didn't want to kill the enemy. So I figured in the medical field, you get to save lives. So that's what happened. I joined the military. I learned how to save lives. I learned about all the diseases and why. And you don't learn in depth like a doctor, of course, but you learn what you need to learn. But some of you may think, oh, she doesn't know. She's confused. She just like does this and does that and without even thinking. And it's like she's not responsible. She cannot possibly be taking care of her son. What others say about me does not define who I am. This is why I like to read the labels. I like to make my phone calls. I know I'm not the only one. I've never said I was the only one. But it's what I do. I like to read the labels. I like to look at the ingredients. If there's a questionable ingredient, I like to make a phone call and ask them to please consider in the future. And it's not anything that they're going to call DHR on me for that. And say, look, this crazy lady. No, they say thank you, because as a consumer. Because if you wait to get your degree, to write the book, and it's just like that same pattern. You publish your book, you publish your information for somebody else to read, to get their degree, to publish their book, to publish the information. It's about being active with that information. So, activism. The Word of God and the love of God is active. It's an act. You can feel it and see it. So as a child, after the injury, I was hospitalized for a long time because the injury became infected. And I ended up going back to the hospital with an even more serious injury this time because I shouldn't say even more seriously, but it was more serious. It was just as serious, but it was a different type because now we're dealing with infection versus, potentially severed artery. So the hospitalization was a total of 6 months. And my mother borrowed a lot of money from friends and family to pay for the hospitalization. and by the grace of God, you know. But I was hospitalized for a long time, so I read comic books. And I was just bedridden. For the first time, I had been in bed so long, I just could not even move because my leg had to be elevated. My right leg had to be elevated, and often throughout my hospital stay. So my weight was right on my butt. So that's where I had all the sores. And I remember back in the days, we used the bedpans because they didn't want to do a catheter on me too much because of infection. So once I was okay to be without a catheter, they removed the catheter, and they have to, you have to lift your hiney, and they put a bedpan, and then they clean you as best they can, but there's always, you know, you're not completely clean. So I was in bed for a long time, unable to move much. And so I read, and I slept, and I read and I slept, and I watched some TV, but I really wasn't interested in TV. Too loud, too much stimulation. So I had been a very active child prior to that, and as soon as I recovered after that, very active, climbing and busy, running. But I also like to draw, and I like to color. So I had liked that kind of stuff. So I never had a weight problem growing up. I did gain a little bit of weight. I was a little fat baby. That was when I was a baby. I mean, who hasn't been a fat baby? It's just normal for most of us. But when I was hospitalized, I did gain a little bit of weight, but it went away. It was from all the IVs, obviously, and immobilization. Just being, I shouldn't say IV, being without able to move, obviously. But the food that they fed me at the hospital was disgusting. It was disgusting. It was meat, and you could see the nerves, and the meat was boiled like broth and with meat flavor in it, and I just was miserable. Just horrible food. So I know it's good for us, for our bones or whatever, but anyway, I joined the military. I wanted to save lives. I couldn't envision myself shooting the enemy to kill anybody. That's not what I wanted to do with my gun. I wanted to save lives, so I thought, well, if I have to, if they're coming at me, I will shoot them, but in a place where I can quickly heal them, just to stop them from killing me. I envisioned that. So when I was in the military, I received a lot of shots at once, and I can't pinpoint exactly what did it, but when it's a combination of things, you don't know exactly which one. I was told to bring my childhood vaccine record, and then they said, well, never mind, because we're just going to do it all over again. So everybody went through the line receiving cocktail of shots, whichever arm it was, I don't remember. So I'm only 5'1", and not everybody has the same tolerance to the same stuff. So I am not anti-vaccine. I'm anti something that's not needed. Give the right medication or the right vaccine or the right treatment to the right person at the right time for the right reasons. Respect the 5 rights of medication, which is, we already know the 5 rights of medication. So when we were in moving transition, is because I was being asked, Alexander and I were in moving transition, is because I was being asked to go to work, and I couldn't find work anywhere. The only job that was being offered was at night and weekends as a housekeeper through a staffing company, and I had joined that company to work in food and beverage, and certainly not during the weekends and nights once my son got back and was with me. So the pressure was being put on me to go to work, and the drinking to get drunk, and I reached out for help from church, and I believe that DHR needs to be providing the right service for the right person at the right time for the right reasons. Otherwise, it's a waste, fraud, and abuse of our taxpayers' money to be providing services for somebody who doesn't need such services. Our labs, the credibility is just not there anymore because we have local labs that have been sued for committing fraud with their testing. So if they're committing fraud with their testing to take kids away from their rightful parents, how can we trust any other testing anymore? So I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm anti giving the wrong vaccine to the wrong person for the wrong reasons. And we don't know the long-term effects of such, which is most likely inflammation. And inflammation is related to some mental illness that is, in my opinion, reversible with a proper diet. The reason why I wanted to go into culinary nutrition is because you're combining culinary arts and food. My first word when I was a baby learning how to speak was comida, comida, which means food. And I was such a fat baby because I loved to eat that the doctor told my mom they had to put me on a special diet to lose weight as a baby. So to me, these things come in so naturally because they go hand in hand, you know? Sometimes you need to be on a special diet for certain reasons, and sometimes you don't. Once that is corrected, because food is medicine, and medicine is food. But food can also be a poison for some people. Not everybody can tolerate the same things. So all of these things happening simultaneously. And this is why Albert Einstein studied about the space and light, is because it's like a diamond. When you look at a diamond from different angles, or you turn it like this, it has that fire, right? You see the fire. Some diamonds have more fire than others. And it has to do with, you know, the 4 C's of diamond, which we know. The clarity, the cut, the carat weight, the color. And when you turn the diamond, you see these different colors, right? See, light doesn't age. I know it sounds silly, but if you can think about it that way. So, everything is happening simultaneously. Always. Our bodies, we are generating, and some things are dying, and some things are being regenerated, rejuvenated, and some things are decaying within us. That's the way it is. So when DHR picked up Alexander, and based on allegations that I was potentially suicidal, and they asked me, how many children do you have? How old are they? Where's your oldest son? Who has custody of him and why? It just, like, I can't go through this again. I can't go through this again. When I was in Mississippi, and I wanted to continue my education in culinary nutrition, was not able to leave. I felt trapped, and the only way that I could escape was the gym and going out dancing with my friend Charles. He was my dancing partner. My friend Charlie Price from Mississippi, not Mobile. I had no relation with Charlie that I met in Mobile, because I met Charlie in Mobile in 2018. But my friend Charlie was a tall black gentleman, and he was a gentleman, as was Charlie in Mobile, a gentleman. Charlie was very much gentle. There was never any inappropriate touching. Never any disrespect, any bad words. It was very nice to have a friendship that's healthy. There's no sex, no excessive alcohol. I mean, we would go out and have a drink, but it wasn't anything out of control. And no drugs, no sex, no violence, no inappropriate talk. It's just pure fun. So, I had people wanting to take advantage of that situation, of my vulnerability. And President Eisenhower warned us about these government contracts and unethical studies from the medical and, he said scientific and technological elite. So, when you learn these things that have been there all along, they've been there all along, and now you see it, and you're like, whoa. It's like you have to know how to filter these things. Okay? You have to filter through all of these things that you're finding out and are becoming aware. We can't continue to treat one another like to demoralize one another. We can't continue to do that. It doesn't matter what social status you are, what age, what gender, what race, how much education or lack of it. We can't continue to treat each other this way, demoralizing people, because it's like a domino effect. It's a domino effect. But I don't want to, and I would never encourage anyone, it doesn't matter how old they are, whether they're 27 or 47. I would never encourage somebody to especially a woman or a man, to be with somebody else for money, because that only leads to unhappiness. And when I was in Mobile going through the hardship, but I was still managing, independent from the government, independent from DHR, because I came to the conclusion that the more I asked for help, it was more like a labyrinth. So I decided I'm just gonna
hope and pray I can find a full-time job and pay my apartment. And I was doing so. And Alexander was not returned to me. And I remember in my apartment on Carlisle, one time I was asleep and I heard this several times. And I heard, and because I remember when I had laser on my melasma, I remember the sound of that, like they say it's like a rubber band. But that's the sound I heard, and I felt something here like choking me. I don't know what that was. I don't think it was a squirrel. But whatever it was, I said, I am not leaving without my children. I am bound to my children. And I took my Susan Lordy willow tree mother and child little figurines, and I held them and I said, I am not going without my children. I am bound to my children, because whatever you bound on earth will be bound to you in heaven. And when I was hanging out with my friend Charlie, people assumed that we were romantically involved. Because when people see friends that are the opposite sex, they assume that you are romantically involved. And we have never been romantically involved. And I was very honest from the very beginning. And we continued our friendship, and it was a very nice friendship. But he was not necessarily going to get me my son back, because I was not seeing. DHR switched my caseworker, and it was like I was coming live and speaking to all, so that you could see what was happening, that my son was not being returned to me. If they had returned my son to me, that would have been the end of that. But do you see how I feel exploited? When I met my friend here, he was very gracious to bring me to his house. And because I didn't want to be some hooker that he met somewhere, because there was never any of that indication anyway. But I didn't want him to view me as some homeless, I don't want to insult anyone out there who's in a situation, because I know that people will take advantage of people in those kind of situations, men and women. And I believe that this is why people do these kind of things. It's because they can take advantage. This is why these kids get passed around to and from these foster homes and placed in group homes instead of DHR helping the families. It's because they want to take advantage of the situation that everyone can see. And this is not fair to me. This is not fair to my children. Because you want to satisfy your curiosity about something, or do testing on me to satisfy your curiosity. Because just like I am part white and part black and part Asian and Native and the different races that I am, we are the body of Christ. We are independent, but we're not. I shouldn't say independent. Let me rephrase that. We are individual parts of the whole body of Christ. So, when DHR spends money on our government spends money on paying labs to switch people's results, to take their kids away from them so that their kids and the parents can be in these programs. While you have people who are actually needing rehab for drugs or alcohol. To me, this country is doing it backward. I've been told you need to pray for those who have an addiction. And I've been told that I am mothering an individual. And I feel that people don't understand that the Word of God and God's love is active. The spoken word is an active word. So if I'm learning that there's a lawsuit for my car because of there's an engine, basically the cars catch on fire. So if I'm learning that there is a class settlement for my car, and I've been given the information, what am I going to do? Am I just going to pray about it? Or am I going to fix it? If I have been given a car as a gift, and I'm being told that this car, my car, because my car falls in that category, that there is a lawsuit, a recall, I'm not just going to ignore it because I don't want my car to catch on fire. If I've been notified, then I'm going to go and see what can be done to make sure. You know? Being active. If I'm learning that artificial colors and flavors and artificial preservatives are not good for us, then I'm going to do something about it. If I'm being told that you have to pray for somebody, I pray, but I also reach out and say, look at your son. But you have to be careful, because when I did this in Mobile, when I lived with Andy, his parents are both involved in the church, Catholic church. You have to be careful when you say, look at your son. Because as soon as you do that, they will say, look at your son. And I had my son placed with a first grade teacher who was picking on Alexander from the moment he started first grade. So I am a nurturer. I am a mother. I'm not perfect. I drink coffee. I chew gum. I have a broken home. But as you can see, my stepfather and my mom were separated for 18 years. We're still married. They're back together. My sisters may have had some disagreements with my mom and came to me a long time ago at different times, and I advised them, communicate, forgive, move on. But it seems to me that when I reach out, it's not okay for me to reach out. So I reach up. And you doubt me. It's like, look what you've done. Look who you are. Look who you are not. Who are you to talk about culinary nutrition? Who are you to talk about God? Who are you? I am a small part of the body of Christ. So, when all this COVID came, I was advised, let's apply for unemployment. So I did. And I figured they don't want me to be sitting here eating and hanging out without providing. So I've got to be able to provide for myself. because they had already helped me with a car and letting me stay here. So I got my unemployment, but I buy my own food most of the time, and I cook, I clean. I'm happy to do it. But I asked, can I provide this address for DHR? Because they need to know where I'm at. And I did so immediately. And I was told, yes, you can. I said, thank you. And I asked, can I pay rent here to bring my son here? And I was told, well, this house is going to be sold. That was last year. And I was told, we have a work that's going to be extended for another year. So I figured, well, can my son come here? And I was told, see, I'm here most of the time with my friend, whom I thought was my boyfriend. So, if we're friends, there shouldn't be any sexual harassment. If you're boyfriend and girlfriend, then you can be intimate, and it's normal. So, which way are we going? And I was told, well, I don't want that responsibility of being with child. See, men, and I instill this in my children, men, when they go out there looking for a date or looking for whatever they call it, an adventure or a relationship or temporary or permanent, whatever it is, you can't be out there sleeping around because there's a lot of diseases, for one. For two, what can you do for that young lady or for that old lady? Because it's the manly thing to do. So, he helped me out. He brought me to Montgomery, but he said, I can't have child. And I said, well, you don't have to worry about my son. Let me worry about my son. I'm the one who cleans. I'm the one who cooks. I'm the one who mothers according to his mother. So, if I clean and I cook and I buy groceries and I buy my own clothes and I buy my own toiletries and I buy my son's toiletries and clothes, and sometimes I don't like it when food goes to waste, so I like to cook and for people to eat before we buy more food or order food. I remind people there are people out there who are hungry and who are digging through the trash to eat. So you've got to be careful when you tell the mother, look at your son, because it wounds them, you know. But I'm not here to hurt anybody. I'm here to help. You know, it's like, help me get my son. So do you rather have my son going to Brazil? And I was told by my friend that, well, he's probably better off in foster care because you can't provide for your son. And when I got on food stamps, because I was assisted with the process for food stamp, I mean, not for food stamps, I'm not on food stamps, for unemployment. I was honest. I said my last full-time job was such, and I only worked temporary part-time at, Naaman's Catering, and then I just started at Kuko's, but I didn't work there, and I was told, I've been told my whole life up until now, that if you make under $500, you really don't have to report it as an income. But now I'm finding out that you do. So, whatever. I did the best I could, and I reported as best I could. I specified my last full-time job was such, and this is what happened. And so, I don't want anybody to say, well, this lady's not trustworthy. She just wants to sit back and have the government. And it's like, I've been denied employment in the past. And it's a domino effect. I'm a veteran, and I've been denied services as an assistance in the past. And that has a domino effect. DHR is supposed to be helping with housing and the right service for the right person at the right time. And I've been denied. And when I'm being told that, well, he's better off in foster care because you can provide, it's like, how can you say I cannot provide? I go grocery shopping. I take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. I provide. I cook. I clean. That if that's all that I can do, because I can't work with a mask. I can't work in the industry that I like, which is the food industry. I cannot work with a mask. I suffocate. I can do it when I'm not very active. If I'm shopping, you're not going back and forth sweating. Plus, they have half of the tables. Servers make $3 an hour plus tips. So, all of these things happening simultaneously. It's like, what color is the diamond? What color do you see? If you're over here, you're going to see a certain flash of color. You're over there, you're going to see another flash of color. When you're over here, you're going to see another. That's the way it is. See, on the diamond you have these different windows, and the light enters and is dispersed. Is it dispersed? I don't know. Is that the way it goes? It enters. What happens? And then there's like the in between the windows. There's these little in between, so it reflects the light back. So the person who cuts the diamond has to cut it at the right angle and consider the color of the diamond, of the rough diamond. You have to consider the rough diamond, what you're starting with. And then the jeweler who has many, 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 many years of training, right? But they have to start somewhere. They have to start as an apprentice. And they're sitting or standing, maybe not sitting, but standing, behind a jeweler. And they're learning the skills. And it takes years and years and years and years, because you don't want to let somebody cut into a diamond. They don't know what they're doing. So, but you've got to learn somehow, right? So you start with the other little other lesser projects, right? But when you've got this very special rough, you want to give it to the best. And sometimes the best jeweler may or may not be in America. It may not be in America. We have an earth that's full of people, and we are parts of the body of Christ. Whether you believe it or not, that's the way it is. Because Christ is righteousness. Christ is looking around and lifting up, lifting up, lifting up. And the reason why I brought up to DHR, they said, well, we're going to send Alexander to Brazil. I said, I birthed Alexander. I was alone. These people around me, my friends and family, they were there, but they were not there. Some of them were instigating. Some of them were mocking me. Some of them were using me. Making fun. And there's all kinds of contracts, government contracts. And President Eisenhower warned us, do not become captives of the scientific, technological elite. But Christ, He's going to take care of all of that. Because He is the Son of God. He's the one who has been lifted, raised from death, and who comes back. His will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So I have an appointment March the 1st at 11:30 to see about my car. Make sure, because I bought the car. Well, I didn't buy it, but it was a gift last year, and I am sure my car's going to be fine. But I'm very grateful when somebody gives you a gift, whether it's a car or unemployment. There's a difference between the gift of life, eternal life from God, and the gifts. And then there are some other gifts that you have to pay back for. See, when somebody buys you a car, you've got to give back, right? You've got to give back. So you cook, you serve, and you're happy to do it. But I ask, can my son come here? I'll pay whatever. However I know how to pay. And I was told, well, we're going to sell this house, but then there's going to be an extension because of work. And it's like, well, can I bring my son? I was told, well, we have family that comes over to the house, but it's once in a blue moon. And you see it in the Asian cultures and in the Hispanic cultures. You see where when it's family gets together, they're all kind of like sandwiched in the house during the holidays. And I think, doesn't anybody care that my son's spending the holidays with strangers? And I'm here. And then before you know it, you start to realize I'm not part of the family, of this family. I'm not part of the family. And you start to feel it because they hint. And I'm thinking, if I'm going to help a mother and she wants to be with her child, I'm going to help the mother and her child. If my son has come out and said, Mom, I want to be with you, with almost tears in his eyes, and you want to help the child and the mother, don't be hypocrites. So, there was a television program the other day, and it said, things are not as advertised. And I had a conversation with my friend, and he said, oh, I know. And I said, I've never advertised myself. If somebody does something with my image, my body, my words, for their purposes and takes it out of context, first of all, that's illegal. It's unethical. It's illegal. But I've never advertised myself other than in a resume. And if you read my resume, which I have posted, it doesn't say anything about sexuality. See, God has put me here on earth and puts us here. And some of us are vulnerable, and some of us take advantage of the vulnerable. And some of us don't. So when my friend said, oh, I know, I said, I'm going to remind you that when you and I met, I was not advertising myself as any kind of sexual anything. In fact, all of my videos have been about the injustices that we do to one another. So, he didn't say anything. But I've never advertised myself, so if somebody is advertising me, whether they're making money or not, I want you to know that I'm not making money. I've been on unemployment because I was assisted with the unemployment process, but it was all from this COVID. And I had to be very careful because, my last full-time employment had been such as I stated, and I made a statement because they wanted me to elaborate, which I did. And then I got a phone call back, and I further explained because they had a question about like the employer in between, and I said, well, it's only part-time temporary. And this is why you cannot make a living out of something that's part-time temporary. It has to be a full-time job. So that's why I came to Montgomery. But I haven't left Alabama because my son is in Alabama. And I'm not the enemy of Alabama. I'm not the enemy of Mobile. I'm not the enemy of the United States. But it is true that we have had a lot of corruption. Not just in the government, but among us. Everybody and their brother comes in, and the veterans and the poor, or the poor and the veterans, are not prioritized. I've had people come in and mock me in my face. I know how to clean my house. I know how to maintain the orderliness and cleanliness and declutter it. You've seen photos of my home in Mobile, in my apartment in Mobile. Nobody needs to teach me how to clean house or how to cook or how to be a nurturing person. But I am hurting because my son's not with me, and it's abundantly clear that I'm not part of the family. So, what would you do? You still need a place to live. Nothing's for free down here in the world. You've got to pay back. You've got to work. You've got to cook. You've got to clean, no matter where you go. So that's what I was doing anyway in my house when I was told to go get a job in Mobile. And y'all know my qualifications. Thank you.